The next service that we're going to look at is Plar, which stands for Prior Learning Assessment and Recognition. So this service allows you to have your life experience recognized. And when we say life experience, I really just mean anything other than formalized post-secondary study. So Plars are usually based on work experience, but you could use work training or volunteer work, self-study, or travel experience. I do just want to mention that one thing you can't base your Plar on is your high school experience. So if you took a grade 12 U-level calculus course, that cannot be the basis of your Plar to exempt you from a math class in your Algonquin College program. So we can never use high school experience as the basis for a Plar. And you can't use your previous post-secondary studies either usually, because that would go through the credit transfer process. But almost everything else that you've done in your life would be considered eligible Plar experience. So there are a few considerations that you might want to think about as you consider whether or not you should apply for a Plar. So to be eligible, you have to be at least 19 years old or have an Ontario Secondary School diploma or equivalent. You have to be an Algonquin College student with a student number. It could still be before you've started your program, right? Like you might be looking at applying for Plar during the summer for a program that you're starting in the fall, but you still need to have that student number already. You can't have failed the course that you're challenging through Plar within the last 12 months. So say last semester you were unsuccessful with a course, Plar unfortunately won't be an option for you, at least for the next 12 months. You can't have been unsuccessful with a Plar challenge for the course that you're challenging within the last 12 months, which really just means if you initiated a Plar for something, you were not successful with that Plar, you can't apply to re-Plar it. You would need to either wait another 12 months or if you were unsuccessful with your Plar, we would probably recommend that you take that course. And then finally, you have to be approved by the academic area as an eligible candidate to challenge a course. So that last piece is actually built into the Plar process, which we're about to talk more about on the next slide. So how do you apply for a Plar? So the very first step has you do some research on the course that you're thinking about doing a Plar of and reflect on how it matches up to your experience. So you can visit the Plar website, which is algonquincollege.com/Plar, to pull the course outline for the course that you're thinking about challenging through Plar. So once you've got that course outline, you're going to complete a self-assessment. So you'll need to do this for each course that you're applying to do a Plar of. And you can download the self-assessment form through the Plar website. But I've also included a snapshot of it on this slide just so that you get a sense of what this looks like. So basically, you're going to use the course outline to copy and paste the course learning requirements and embedded knowledge and skills from the course outline right into the CLR column of the self-assessment form. So course learning requirements and embedded knowledge and skills sound kind of complicated, but at the end of the day, they're really just the core content of the course, and they're all provided on the course outline. So in the evidence of learning section of the self-assessment, that's where you're going to describe how your experience matches up to that learning requirement or skill. So you don't need to write an essay for this section, but you should be very clear about things like where you worked, what you did, and when. So for example, I've pulled just in this little screenshot here, the first course learning requirement and embedded knowledge and skill from one of our Communications 1 classes at Algonquin. And I've used an example of how I meet that criteria in my own work as the Algonquin College Plar coordinator. So in our Communications 1 class, one of the things you're going to do is plan, write, revise, and edit short documents and messages that are organized, complete, and tailored to specific audiences. The embedded knowledge and skills, so just kind of breaking this course learning requirement out a little bit more, is to identify audience and purpose. And then here in the evidence of learning column, I've talked about how in my role as Plar coordinator, I have to write emails and website content and draft presentation content, and I need to adapt my tone to best address that audience, whether I'm talking to students or I'm talking to chairs or managers or whatever, right? So it's short, but it also is very specific about what I did and when. And then finally, we just have you rate your level of confidence for each of those embedded knowledge and skills in that last column. So here I think I'm very confident at it, and I've rated myself a 5, but yeah, so you'll fill that in for each section. So self-assessments do take a little bit of time to fill in, but they're a really good opportunity to really reflect on how exactly your experience matches up to course content. Because just because a course title sounds like something that you have experience in, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same thing. You want to double check that you really do know the detailed content of a course before you apply to do a Plar. It's also super important to be honest with yourself about how your experience aligns with each course learning requirement, because PLARs are graded using the same grading methodology as the course. So that means that if you Plar a course that's normally graded with an A to F letter grade, your Plar will probably also be graded with an A to F letter grade. It's a major way in which Plar and credit transfer differ, actually. So credit transfers will always show up on your transcript as an EX, which it doesn't impact your GPA at all, but it does indicate that credit was granted. Plar, on the other hand, appears on your transcript exactly the same as if you'd taken the course, and they often do impact your GPA. So the two major exceptions to this are Plars of general educational electives, which are going to show up on your transcript as a CR, just indicating credit, and a failed Plar. So if you challenge a course through Plar, you find that you're unsuccessful with it, that F will not show up on your transcript. You don't get the credit. So going back to the actual process of applying for your Plar, once you've filled in your self-assessment form, that's when you're going to fill in the online Plar application form. So it's a form that we've set up through the Plar website. There's a big button that says apply for Plar that takes you straight to that application form. And you'll fill in all the requested information and attach your completed self-assessment. Once you submit your application, you'll get a confirmation email, and your application will go straight to the Plar office. So really that just means my inbox. And we'll review it on our end just to make sure that you've filled in everything correctly and that you meet basic eligibility criteria. As a next step, we send it to your program coordinator, or depending on the course, it might be a communications coordinator or another subject matter expert for a second eligibility check. That step usually takes about a week or so, but it can take a little bit longer in peak periods, like the first 3 weeks of classes. So we do recommend applying early when you can. Once your eligibility is confirmed, you'll receive an email from the Plar office notifying you of your eligibility. At that point, if you wish to continue with the Plar, and if you are currently registered in the course that you're challenging, you'll need to contact your program coordinator to request a withdrawal from that course. So this is one part of the Plar process that we find there can be some confusion around. So I just kind of want to call your attention to it and break it down a little bit. So do not withdraw from the course until you receive an email from the Plar office confirming your eligibility. However, once you get that email, if you intend to continue with your Plar, you must withdraw because Plar policy does not allow you to remain in the class once your eligibility is confirmed. That said, if you are ever unsure of what you're supposed to do, please just reach out to the Plar office, because what we don't want is for you to be prematurely withdrawn from a class, right? So if you're ever in doubt, email plar@algonquincollege.com. The eligibility email that I'll send over will also ask you to pay your Plar fee. So the fee, it always depends on the assessment methodology, which is decided by the academic area, but it would be $113.61 for exams and $90.70 for portfolios and assignments. The next stage of the Plar process is assessment. So something else that I just want to flag here in terms of timelines is that Plar assessments are developed on an as-needed basis. And what that means really is that we may or may not already have an assessment on file and ready for you to complete. If we have it on file, you're going to get it very, very quickly. Like you would apply, you would have your eligibility confirmed, and then you're going to get an email from me saying, here you go, this is what you're going to complete, right? If we don't have the assessment on file, it needs to be developed by a faculty member, and that usually takes about 4 weeks. So just keep that in mind when you're considering how early to apply. But depending on the course, you may actually find that you have an additional month or so of a wait time. So yeah, I recommend applying for Plar in general the semester before you're scheduled to take that course, just because it gives the academic area lots of time to develop the assessment, and it gives you time to complete it. And then if for whatever reason you are not successful with your Plar, you can still take the course on schedule in your program. But in any case, once you've completed your Plar, you can email it to plar@algonquincollege.com in a digital format, so either a PDF or a Word document, and we'll send it off to the academic area to be graded. And then finally, you'll hear back from the Plar office via email with your results, usually about 2 weeks from when you submit your assessment. So I realize this is a ton of content about two services that are very similar in purpose. They both recognize your previous experience, but they're also very different in process, right? So I just want to close with a quick recap about credit transfer and Plar and how they differ. So credit transfer is also often called exemption, and it's for when you have prior post-secondary academic experience. Whether or not the credit transfer is granted is determined by using your transcript as well as the course outline for your previous course. If the credit transfer is granted, it will appear on your transcript as an EX, which indicates that an exemption was granted, but it doesn't impact your GPA. And finally, you should keep attending class until you receive an email from the registrar's office stating that your credit transfer was granted. Plar, on the other hand, is for your previous work or life experience. So for Plar, you're formally assessed either through an exam, a portfolio, an interview, or an assignment, and the grade appears on your transcript as though you've taken the course regularly, which means you may wind up with a letter grade that impacts your GPA. Finally, you can't be registered in the course while you formally pursue a Plar. So either apply way in advance of the semester that you're scheduled to take the class, or be prepared to withdraw from that class after your eligibility is confirmed, but before you've been granted the credit.